So who are the Irish Regenerative Land Trust? We are kind of a hodgepodge group of food producers, citizens, academics, landowners, land seekers, cooperative members, professionals, healthcare workers. Next, please. In 2015, the history of IRLT, a group of growers and farmers highlighted the problem of access to land. And in March 2000, and we met kind of informally, had discussions around this. And then in March 2018, we invited Dr. Titus Banner over to host a workshop for us in Galway from Cultureland, and he became a project mentor. And then in August, we got involved with the EIT, the CHICC Greenhouse Programme, a climate change programme with involvement from Mary Robinson, again to help organise us a bit. September 2018, the Erasmus Plus KA2 with the Access to Land began again to initiate the Irish Trust more formally. In May 2019, so we're now kind of 4 years from the initial around the kitchen table chats, we attended a SHICC conference in London, and we were granted SHICC CLT feasibility funding, which is similar to what SOA are now entering into, well, the same kind of project that SOA are involved in now. And in June 2019, we had agreement from a donor of an Offaly pilot site, and that was surveyed then in July. And in September 2020, we now have agreement in principle for an urban or a town, a rural Irish town, so kind of an urban site in Cork. Thanks. So the co-founders, now that we are starting to formally found IRLT, are Evan Short, a grower in Burr in County Offaly, Alistair Fraser, an academic in Maynooth University in the Geography Department, lecturing particularly in food, myself with a background in surveying and also community development, but mainly what I bring to the project is my surveying and my experience in architecture and land and buildings. And Tom Stewart. Tom, how would you describe yourself?
I'm a mental health advocate, and I'm very active in the cooperative movement.
Thanks, Tom. SOA, you can move on to the next slide. So as I said, we're now at the founding stage. We're incorporating the CLG, incorporating IRLT as a CLG. We've received some pro bono legal advice, and they've said that the CLG, the company limited by guarantee, is an appropriate model at this stage of the project because it's easily formed and easily broken. And we might move into different legal formation, but at the moment we're incorporating as a CLG. And as you can see in number 2 in the screenshot, the main object for which the company is established is ecological regeneration through the democratic stewardship of land for the benefit of the community. Thanks, Tom. So the step-by-step project which we're undertaking at the moment is to create that entity into which the land can be transferred, and that will be the Irish Regenerative Land Trust Company Limited by Guarantee. And then we will transfer the ownership of land from the donor in Offaly and the donor in Cork into IRLT through conveyancing, through those through the property registration authority, through whatever means officially necessary. Then we seek to source a project which has regenerative intentions, and we create a lease for that project to take on the land to work it or to live in it, whatever that project intends. Thanks, Tom. So the land in County Offaly, this is our demo project, as it were, with the ecological focus. It's a small amount of land to start with, 1/2 an acre, but the landowner has a larger plot of land and he is donating that to us. So the proof of this concept of community land trust and regenerative land is that a market gardener is keen to establish food production through biodiversity and permacultural principles, and that a section of that larger landholder's holding will be taken out of monocultural production. I'll explain the definitions of regeneration in a moment. and that the organic matter of the soil is regenerated. Thanks, Tom. So as a surveyor, my proof is that we have a map of the land, and that I went to speak to the landholder, and that he is willing to give it, and that we now have, this is a working drawing, not the red line map. When I surveyed the land, I noticed there was a need for a right of way to access the plot. So those kind of skills that I bring to the project to prepare it for conveyance. It's part of a larger plot, so it needs to be subdivided, hence the new red line. That will then be registered with the Property Registration Authority of Ireland, and the right of way was noted. And this European level standards are cadastral. European countries have a cadaster, whereas in Ireland, we, like the UK, we just have a general boundary registration system. So we are upping the standard within the land trust, within the Irish Regenerative Land Trust, and having a cadastral standard survey carried out. Next slide, please. And then the town project, with more of a housing focus, is a disused pub with the intention to convert it to maybe 8 to 10 housing units. And the owner of the pub wishes to downsize internally and to live on in one of the housing units within the former pub. And again, proving the proof of concept will be that we have renovated an existing structure, which has a shorter lead time than a new build, and the reuse of building materials. It's a small town, so the amenities are within walking distance, and including transport infrastructure means there's no parking requirement. And the social aspect of the property owner living on in the building as part of the community. So just, I've mentioned the concept of regeneration, and that is in the title of our community land trust. So the definition of regenerative agriculture is a system of farming principles and practices that increases biodiversity, enriches soils, improves watersheds, and enhances ecosystem services. Regenerative agriculture aims to capture carbon in soil and above ground biomass, reversing current global trends of atmospheric accumulation. And from an architectural perspective, regenerative building design is all about thinking ahead, where architects must design with the future in mind every step of the way, as opposed to sustainably designed buildings, which are based on the concept of only using the minimum resources you need. Regenerative buildings are designed and operated to reverse damage and have a net positive in the environment. And within the operation of the IRLT, one of the key steps is to create leases with projects which will then take on the use of the land. And we're considering these as green leases. And one of the challenges around this will be that the lease will contain clauses which measure the regenerative use of the land. And then there will be a break clause if the Irish Regenerative Land Trust deem that the leaseholder is not sticking to those clauses. And there will be presumably a lease fee to be paid to the Irish Regenerative Land Trust. And the key metrics, or the items that we would be measuring, would be, as the definition of regeneration: soil organic carbon, biodiversity, water retention, the use of natural building materials, recycling, etc. And we have a partnership with Green Restoration Ireland, who are looking at peatland restoration and carbon capture, carbon sequestration. And the metrics and standards is Vera, which is a European carbon counting, or carbon, like a stock market kind of a thing. Thanks, Tom. So the SHICC project, which has already been introduced to you, is the Sustainable Housing for Inclusive and Cohesive Cities, a European Interreg project, and we have received feasibility study through a voucher scheme that SHICC oversees. And we have called in on the help of some advisors, including Rolf Novi-Hoy from Stiftung Trias in Germany, Tiziana O'Hara from Belfast, who runs Cooperative Alternatives, and Tom Woolley, the author of Natural Building. Thanks, Tom. So the true European best practice models, and Tom Stewart, if you don't mind, I might bring you in for this slide, please, if you wouldn't mind speaking about both of these.
We're only 2 minutes left, Roisin, also.
Yeah, I think we're nearly there. So, Tom, you've only 1.5 minutes.
Okay, I'll just skip through. We were very interested by the work of Titus Banner. Their model, which is a land cooperative rather than a charity, is based on essentially patient capital impact investment. And that money is put in on the basis that the use of the land is in a socially and ecologically responsible manner. They ask that people meet at least 2 of the standards that you see there, which sort of includes social, educational, farming, and so forth. Need to address another slide. Yeah, the other model is Trias, which is more of a charitable model. We have taken the charitable model, and I'll partially address this in questions, partially because it increases sort of interoperability, the potential for community asset transfer, and those sort of approaches. It's also because the Ireland understands charities far better than it does cooperatives, if I can put it that way. But we're lucky enough that we are, the trust has been supported to date by at least 3 cooperatives. And they have effectively tithed or subsidized us getting this far. Next slide.
So that's it. Our next step is the proof will be in the pudding, where we will carry out and conclude our demo projects, the ecological one and the housing one, and the urban and rural test cases. And from then on, we will examine the potential for a community asset transfer, maybe a crowdsource purchase, and impact investment. So that's the presentation. Just bang on time, Davy, I think.
Great. Roisin and Tom,